So last time that we looked at this, you were removing the chipping medium thing, the paint layer.
Yes, I was using it. You damp it and
Yeah.
brush it a bit gently.
But you weren't happy with it.
No, it came off in big chunks. It was a bit uncontrollable, and it didn't look realistic to me. Well, some of it did.
So what have you done now?
Well, that's one of the places I used it. Now that actually looks quite reasonable to me. Both those sides, because that's where mechanics and pilots would stand as they're, getting into the cockpit and sorting the pilot out and that kind of thing, and up the sides a bit. I think the mechanic would be in that side while the pilot's getting in there. So that worked out reasonably okay. But other places there were big lumps came off. So what I've done is to respray a bit carefully the patches where too much come off, so I get back to the original colour I had, and then use the silver pencil.
Which is your method of choice? It's your old method, isn't it?
Now it's become the silver pencil.
But it's what you do normally, isn't it? I know that you've done it on other
before,
yeah,
because it's just a lot more controllable. So I've used that in quite a few places. You may not be that easy to see because hopefully it's rather subtle.
Well, I can. Yeah, look. Well, you can see. Can you see that?
So the little silvery bits, and I've used the pencil just to sort of draw around panel lines. Those, for instance, would be the gun bays where when they're putting a load of ammunition in for these three guns, it would all load in there. So they'd have these hatches open, and there would be other access panels for other maintenance. What I did after that was to use some oil paint, this one, sort of mid-grey, and I diluted that with white spirit, quite heavily diluted, and then with a brush just ran it carefully. Now fortunately, because it's an Edouard, they do nice tiny panel lines, and what I did was to touch a brush full of it, a small brush, into the panel line, and it would creep along all the lines. So I've used that to sort of add emphasis to all these panels and on the fuselage. And on the dark surface, it's come out slightly light. So it just gives a nice, very delicate emphasis to panel lines. On the underside, exactly the same colour has come out dark, inevitably, because of the contrast. But again, it just lifts the detail a bit. So you get that slightly used, grubby look. So I'm quite pleased with that. And the same with the fuselage. Let me put the cowling back on. There, because there will be a lot of maintenance going on here. These panels will be off and on all the time, every time it comes back, probably, to check oil and fluids and the rest of it. So I'm quite pleased with the way that's turned out. The next stage is going to get... I'm not quite going to do what I thought I was going to do, so I'm slightly rethinking it. The next thing I want to do is use oil paints again. Now, I've not done it before, but you can see on this, I think I've got relatively few photographs of real HELLCATs in action, but I think this is a reasonably actual picture. What I want to reproduce is this very characteristic exhaust stain down the side of the fuselage. I'm going to use spots of oil paint. I've got some light tans, I might mix them, and then put tiny spots on in the right place and draw them back with a brush wetted with white spirit. Now hopefully that's new. Normally what I've done is to use pastels, various colours like that. And it's difficult to get I mean, on the Lancaster, I did that. It's difficult to get enough on because it's dry.
Are they oil pastels?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But they don't stick terribly well.
They don't stick very well to paper.
And even the Lancaster could do with a bit more because there are characteristic flows of very light, it looks like a light grey exhaust where the heat has sort of burnt the paint, I think, and combustion particles have stuck all over the surface. And I've always tempted to go back to the Lancaster and just do that bit more. But I'm going to try this new technique on the HELLCAT, see where it gets to. That in turn creates the complication that, as you can see, the exhaust streaking goes over the national insignia on the side. Now that means that I've got to put the national insignia on the side
First,
before I can, do this exhaust staining, because it's got to go over that as well. That in turn means I've got to spray the whole thing with a satin or moderately gloss varnish because that'll help the decals transfers settle better, and it should help lose the silvery backing film, which otherwise can spoil a model. So I've got to do that first. And what I'm beginning to think I might do is put the wings and the tailplanes on, get that far, then apply the decals.
Oh, you see,
Transfer.
appealing to the American audience.
Because I'm English, my dad always called it. So I might do that and do a bit more of an assembly, because once I've got the transfers on and the exhaust staining and maybe other bits and pieces of wear, I'll then put a satin finish over the top to seal it all in, airbrushed in, of course. That should pretty much bring it to a close. And there are transfers for these teeth markings, which are very characteristic and rather exotic, and they will need very careful setting down using setting solutions and so on that I've got, which will help them adhere properly and flatten right down to the surface so they look painted on.
Well, people have been talking about how patient you are. I didn't like to say anything.
Didn't you?
No.
That took years. What's going to be interesting is I've got a 0 to make, same scale, and the chipping medium I think might work better because somehow Japanese aircraft were built for lightness, extreme lightness, so they had great range, a massive range compared to Allied aircraft, and very light, fragile paintwork.
All right.
So they got chipped heavily.
Is that what's showing on there? I mean, that my
yes.
flashlight is bouncing off it, so I can't see.
Showing it is sort of a grey.
Yeah.
That would be the aluminium skinning, showing it because the paint was just cracking off in use. So it might be more useful for that. Very characteristic of Japanese aircraft at the time.
Right then, well, I'll leave you to it. I would have given up by now and put it all in a box and chuck some glue in, but...
Yeah, I know. No, it's getting exciting.
It's looking really good.
Beginning to get there. It's just, I'm doing things in different sequences and using different techniques of new ones to me, so...
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
As we say in these parts.
À la prochaine.